call you Loz straight away?
Yeah, that's fine, yeah. 1 second, I don't know what's going on here. Yo, hi, how's it going? How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How's everything on your side of the world?
Yeah, good. We're on completely different time frames though. Is it really early for you?
Yes, it's a little bit early, but I've had coffee, so I'm loving life.
Nice. I was how does it work with the time difference? I couldn't even get my head around it. I was like, so if it's like 9 here, so yeah, it's early for you.
Yeah, well, that's all right. I'm up and about, so hello, and thank you for chatting.
No, not at all. That's wicked, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I mean, I know, obviously, especially where you are at the moment, it has been a pretty rough 12 months for everyone, but there's been some little snippets of niceness coming through, and one huge thing is the impending release of While She Sleeps' 5th album, Sleep Society, in a couple of weeks. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
silver linings coming through. How does it feel after such an insane time, and also obviously so many years in between here and now? Like, how does it feel to finally be at this point?
Yeah, really good. Like we feel really, we're just excited about getting the record out. It's been a weird one. Like, you know, trying to write a record in a pandemic is just a weird thing to do anyway. But we were quite lucky in a way because we'd done a lot of touring pre-pandemic. So yeah, we were scheduled to kind of come off the road and just, you know, focus on writing and demoing and recording anyway. So we're quite lucky in a way that this sort of time frame up until this point has worked in our favour. I feel really bad for any bands that have sort of been creating in a time where, you know, like we were on the road, but they were sort of hiding away creating an album, then they've put an album out and not been able to tour it. It must be really sort of frustrating to have new material and not like take it and sort of support the record with a tour. So I was talking to Ben from Neck Deep, and, you know, he was kind of saying it's just such a strange situation to be in when you can't support your album with the tour. So yeah, we're really lucky up until this point. And and just how it's kind of fallen into place this way for us. Because it could be a very difficult time. And also, like, the pandemic's put like so many people in such a weird situation. Like, we're quite lucky in a way that we've had the record to focus on, so we've kept our minds busy. And so, yeah, in that respect, it's fine. And we're really stoked with the record and, like, can't wait for people to hear more of it. And then hopefully one day tour again.
Yeah. Well, you've accidentally timed it quite well. I agree. I know so many bands, like, there was this whole thing of like 2020 was going to be like, okay, the album's out, let's tour it. So yeah, accidental plans, but obviously right time, right place for you guys. So well done.
Yeah, we're lucky.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So with the album, like, how much of it was already written and done and locked away prior to the pandemic? Like, did you guys kind of have everything in motion well and truly, or did stuff come to fruition once the pandemic was officially on us?
Yeah, more of that. Like, the way that we do things, Sean Long's just like the little riff master, I guess, and he's like always sort of chipping away at like different styles of riff and what he can bring to the table. So like, it's his like favorite thing to do ever. So we kind of base our songs around that structure really. So he'll come to us with an idea first, and we'll build around sort of his writing and his riffs. I feel like touring over the years has been that busy. You know, it used to be so different to now, but now, you know, like a lot more organic. But nowadays, you know, for more underground sort of rock metal bands, it's kind of the way to do things is like you're kind of writing into your Apple Mac computers now. So it's, you know, it's a lot easier for someone to kind of sit there with his guitar and sort of work on the riff side of things while still being on the road. So that's kind of how we work. And yeah, I guess it's always an ongoing process for us. So like, I might dig into some lyrics, but I might have written them 3 years ago, and kind of they speak to me more now than they did then in a way. So yeah, it's not so much that it all came about. There's a few ideas bubbling and like some demo pieces that may have been written, but the majority of the whole process, was all through the pandemic. So I think what's really weird about lyric writing and the way that I try and write lyrics is to try and keep a lot of poetic license in there, so that they can be sort of manipulated to make sense for whoever's listening. So we try and keep it open in that way. I think Dave Grohl said something like, the great thing about lyrics is you can sing it to 80,000 people, but everybody's singing it back to you for 80,000 different reasons. And that, like, when I heard that, I was like, it's such a good way of thinking. So we do try and keep our lyrics quite open, but the interesting thing is how they can relate to the pandemic situation. You might be writing about a bit of a relationship or a bit of a tough time, but it's really funny how, you know, two separate different meanings for something can kind of come back with lyrics and mean like a similar thing. So yeah, it's really interesting to write through a pandemic and not really, because for a while it felt like it would be so easy for bands, especially in our genres, to start writing about the pandemic because that's all we're seeing. So I purposefully stepped away from that. But even though like I was trying not to write about a pandemic, there's still a relationship there between what was going on when I wrote the lyric and what's happening right now. So yeah, it's interesting. But
well, it's funny with that, on that topic, like You Are All You Need, one of the latest singles. I mean, honestly, like it can have so many meanings, but even with this whole pandemic thing, like there is so much that you can take away from that, even because we've had basically, like you've had to be all you need.
Exactly,
choice. But it's pretty interesting. And I guess on the topic of what you're saying about with like how the songs come to life with that, I was interested to read a quote about you guys kind of saying with that song in particular that it was, you know, injecting all of your own personal stuff into it. But I read that, I think it was, I'm sure it was just, Sean was saying that it's the most sleep sound, you know, you guys have been in a while. Can you, in your perspective, what is a sleep sound in 2021 compared to say like when you first joined the band or even your last release? Like, is that an impossible question?
I don't know. I guess like, I don't know. I guess what's interesting about While She Sleeps is that I can strongly stand by the fact that no one else sounds like us. And I think that is down to sort of Sean Long's guitar playing and like my voice and like the way that when we set out, like the important thing for us was to not sound like anyone else. And I feel like we've done really well to craft that. And I feel like nobody sounds like us. And I think there's pros and cons to that thing because I think some people who are just sort of metalcore heads kind of step back a little bit and they don't really know how to digest us sometimes and like, it goes into a bit of a rock sound there, so I don't know if I like it. The fun thing for me is to watch people doing these like reaction videos to us, and like people have suggested for them to do the reaction videos and then they're just kind of like, you see their face kind of twist up and they don't really know how to act and they kind of like it but they don't know if they should like it and it's just fascinating to me. But I don't really know how to answer that. I guess the way that you would define a sleep song was to have like super high energy, a Sean Long riff that doesn't really sound like anyone else's riff, but then with the hookiness and the anthemic side of what a sleep song has matched with the heaviness that we like. I guess You Are All You Need. Yeah, it's one of my favorite tracks on the record. And I didn't really realize that until I sort of sat back and listened to the record as a whole. And there's some great tracks on there, but I think just it's the end tapping solo over like the band doing the breakdown. It's infectious. I guess those are the things that make up like a good sleeps track. I don't really know how to put my finger on exactly what that is, but yeah, I guess that's what he means. It does sound very sleeps.
Yeah.
So
I think the first time I ever listened to you guys, like way back when, like God, over a decade ago, I was like, it wasn't whiplash, but I was just like, for me, like, because I love so much Light and Shade and it was so much changing, and I was like, for 1 minute I thought I knew what it was, and I'm like, no, it's changed. So I love it. I dig it. And yeah, it's interesting.
So much,
it's never boring, but it's always, like you said earlier too, there's so much relatability whether you intended that or not. So yeah, I like not being able to label and define. I think it's a really good thing.
Yeah, I think for us it's important to like step out of that metalcore box. Like there's so many great metalcore bands out there and so many bands that you would say define the genre. For me, that's more of the old school metalcore sound, like Darkest Hour, As I Lay Dying, like Kill Switch Engage, more of the like, Unearthed, more of like the true metalcore. But there's so many great bands now doing that sound. Like, for example, Polaris from Australia, they like absolutely kill that sound. But I think for us, it's about, we all come together, and maybe back in the day, we all used to listen to exactly the same music, but now we're growing up a bit and we're not like, on tour every single like second with each other. Like it used to be the case of like we would just party together all the time, whether it was on stage, off stage, like on top of each other 24/7. As you grow older, life happens, and we're not so much on top of each other now. So we all go away. We all listen to so much different stuff, whether that's like acoustic sort of style stuff, and all the way up to like Meshuggah, for example. And like when we come together, we don't. We do want to step outside that box and bring something different to metalcore, if you like, that means that we don't sound like a band that's been run through the metalcore machine. I think for a while, like sort of 4 or 5 years ago, it was just, there was so many metalcore bands like powering through, and it's just like, it got a bit tedious hearing new bands come up on like you suggested, but all sounding like exactly the same.
Yeah.
So I think like we do bring a bit of a rock vibe into our metal now, and like we just don't want to release any records that sound the same. We want to keep our fan base on its toes, sound a bit different every record, try new things, and like push ourselves as musicians and individually to try and actually sing nice, like sing well in a clean voice, not just for me kind of hide behind this scream and be a one-trick pony. So it's important that we're progressing and sounding different to everyone else, and up until this point, I think we're managing. So.
Yes, mission accomplished, and about to be continued further with Sleep Society. So the journey continues.
Yeah, definitely.
And I know you guys have recently released the full track listing of the album now as well, and there's been some epic surprises. We've got bloody Simon from Biffy Clyro. We've got Derek from Sum 41, and something I want to come back to too, which I loved, is you've also got a very important feature with some of your Sleep Society actual members. Hearing one of the tracks, which I think is just amazing. But coming back to that in a sec, talk me through with Simon and Derek, how did these features come about?
Sort of like really organically, really. Like we went on a tour a few years ago, and there was a guy that was doing lights for Bullet for My Valentine, and we went out to support them. And there was one night we were having a few beers, and he said, I work for these guys. I also work for Biffy Clyro and stuff like that. And we were like, cool, like, just getting to know him. And he said, actually, the Biffy guys like jam your records, and like they're into the band. Obviously, Simon Neil's a great frontman, so the earlier Biffy records I got when I was younger, when it was a bit more like techie, if you like, and a bit more crazy in terms of style. And like, he's a great frontman, so we got a lot of time and respect for the guys. And so we just kind of reached out to him, and once I was going through a bit of a shitty time, really, a bit of downtime, and the demo for Nervous came up on like a Dropbox that Sean had been compiling, and the guys that we'd all been putting ideas into for a long time. And it was weird. It was kind of like I was feeling really like low, and then I heard I was listening through demos that we were putting forward as like our favourites to take towards this new record, and Nervous came on. And I was just like, if this doesn't turn into a huge track, like, it literally uplifted me at that time. And it's one of those tracks that Sean really needed to write. And until this point, I've not really given it much time. It just got pushed to the back of like a demo folder. And I was like, we need to bring this to the forefront and let people hear it. And then the more that developed, and especially the more that the pandemic got more seriously and more people are isolated, and the more you start thinking about that whole thing, the more it made sense to push it further and further up. So we were talking about, just talking about guest spots. And we just, after hearing that Simon liked the band years ago and wanting to get him involved somehow, it just sort of clicked together. And we're like, imagine Simon's voice on that track. So we reached out to him and just said, are you into it? Like, what's your vibe? And he was like, look, I've liked your band for a while. I've been jamming your records, etc. And he was really up for getting involved. So it was amazing to work with him, obviously remotely, but it was really good. And he came with some like really strong ideas. He was really enthusiastic and up for working like on the song, and really loved the demo, and pretty much everything that he did, we just left in because it flowed really nicely with the track. So it was one of those things where it kind of all fit together nicely. And it was ace to work with. And a similar story for Derek Quigley from Sum 41. Like, I remember skateboarding down to my local like record shop when I was a kid, and like literally picking up All Killer No Filler, taking it home and like literally just bouncing around my bedroom with my younger brother. You know what I mean? Like, that's literally the story. Then you fast forward a few years, and like it's he knows about the band and he wants to guest on the record. It's it's crazy. And I think again, like stepping out of that like metalcore metal thing, it's nice to have some guests on there that aren't just in our world. Like, that feels like it'd be really easy to achieve. So it's nice to step out of that and get people involved. And again, he was like super up for it. He was actually having a kid at the time, Derek, and he was like, when we first approached him, he was like, I'm not going to have any time, guys. Like, I'd love to be involved, but I'm not going to be able to make it work. And so like, we gave him his space, but we said, look, we'll send you the track, and if anything changes, get back to us. And obviously, him and his partner had the kid, and then he came back like a month later and was like, you know what, it's not quite as tough as I thought it might be. Like, I've got a bit of free time, I guess. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. So again, amazing. And like, the younger while she sleeps would just be peaking off the fact that, you know, it's we got some cool guests on the record, and I think they brought so much to the songs. Like, it sounds good. And that whole Derek Whibley being on the verses of that song, like, it just sounds like he'd already written it. It sounds like a Sum 41 verse. So yeah, it was really special and cool to get some different people involved that we've looked up to at different times and respect in the industry. And yeah, and just having them involved was really cool. So yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, that's also like pinch yourself moments in those things, but also, again, right time, right place. Like, when it's that easy, you're definitely doing the right thing, I think. So
yeah, it's one of those things. It's one of those things with the music industry, or like being in a band, where like if you'd have told the 14-year-old me everything that was going to happen by this point in my life, then I'd probably just had a nosebleed and passed out. But you know, it's like you catch like little bits of it. Oh, somebody wants to sign you, and then it happens. So it's never this massive, like, huge thing. It's always like little inklings about stuff happening. And the songs are really special for us, and another reason why we really love the record, you know?
Yeah, it's brilliant. And I think another special feature, like, you guys are obviously no strangers to celebrating and incorporating your fans. Like, you are so renowned for how much you love your fans, and vice versa, obviously. But the amazing thing with your Patreon is you've obviously got secret shows, you've got mental health initiatives, all this stuff, but they also get to be on the album, which is just leveling up that relationship even further. But I guess, how was it to blur that line between fan and artist and allow them into this creative space a little bit on this album?
Yeah, amazing. Like, one of the main things we wanted to do with the society is allow the people that are like at the forefront of helping us make this career almost even more sustainable right now. And like, it's important to us that we sort of recognize that. Like, it's not something we just, you know, we've always wanted to like drop the smoke and mirrors and just lay it out as it is. Like, we don't want to be the guys wearing sunglasses inside. You know, we want to be the guys that are just like, this is how shit is. Like, we're not trying to act like huge. We just want to be, you know, your dudes that play like good rock and metal, I guess. And I think it's all a part of that process. And I think just telling our fans exactly how it is, you know, like, with the start of the record, we set out just to outline some of the problems with the industry and say, look, streaming's like making it really difficult for especially like more underground rock, punk rock bands to make it sustainable, even though the demand's there. And the great thing about our fan base is they always just like chew on what we've said for a bit, and then they kind of respond and they're with us in such a positive way. And we're so lucky to have that. Obviously, every member of a band will stand there and say the fans are everything, which, you know, they know they are now, and like, especially our fan base. But there's definitely something there with our fans that just, they're as weird as we are, you know. They respond in such an awesome way to everything we sort of lay out on the table, and they want to support us, and that's just beautiful. So yeah, it's definitely important for us within the society to build on that. And it's just nice to give society members the bigger scoop and the more intimate stuff. So it was really special because the lyric that they sing on in Call of the Void, which is the last song of the record, is actually the first song that we wrote together as a band with me as the vocalist, and it's where the band's at now, the part that they get to sing. So it kind of goes full circle. As like, I think people call it like an Easter egg, where it's like these inside things are going on. So yeah, it is really special, and it's nice to involve them and just give them a bit of respect for like supporting us so heavily. But then there's also this thing of like, I don't want it to get to the point where it feels like we're not stoked about whoever's supporting. It's just that slightly more tight-knit group that are just like, you are my favourite band, here's a few extra quid a month, and it allows us to be like, thank you so much, here's bigger insights, more benefits, and a bit more of a scoop about what's going on. So yeah, it's really special and really cool that we can involve them in that way. And it just means that we get to be less of a clothing brand. Like it's so easy for bands to turn into a clothing brand and just be like ramming like products down your neck. And it's nice to step off that a little bit and allow us to just focus on the music. And then, and rather than being a merch brand, we can focus on the society a bit more, which is a more intense version of just a normal fan base, I guess.
No,
so yeah,
I like that too, because I think for so many people, when you're not touring, it's been really difficult. It's like, how do we make money? Because no one's making money on streaming and, you know, merch and all that. But even then, it's like giving something. There's so much on offer. I had to look through all the levels. I was like, damn, like I've seen Patreons and some of them are like, you get a newsletter once a week for $5. So it's awesome.
It's like we don't want to feel like we're ripping anyone off. So, you know, you can jump in and just drop us like a couple of quid if you like. And that's like, you know, it's cool. But then it's also the guys that are paying a lot of money, they can come and hang out at soundchecks and shit eventually. But, you know, there is a fine line between, you know, what you're putting out there and this and that. So hopefully it does seem like it's an honest representation of what we're trying to achieve. And I feel like the Patreon, they just get it. Do you know what I mean? Like, we just give them updates and say, look, guys, we're super busy at like filming shit and stuff, so expect a bit of downtime. And they're all just like, no worries. We just don't, you know, through this, especially through the pandemic, you know, it's like I say, it's been quite crazy how it's fallen into place for us, and the response that we've got has been good. So we're very grateful, you know, and humbled by it all. And it's just, special, really, I guess.
No, and the authenticity definitely is there, like 100%. But I kind of like, I know, honestly it is. And I like how you kind of mentioned, like with that whole song, how it was written when you first started in While She Sleeps. Can you briefly, since we don't have a lot of live music happening, let's have a tiny bit of nostalgia quickly before I overstay my welcome with you. But can you take me back to your first ever live show with While She Sleeps? Who was there? Where was it? What was the most memorable moment?
So I filled in for While She Sleeps because their other singer had to work, I think. And it was just like a quick 2-day trip to Europe with like, do you remember bands like The Chariot?
Yes.
Do you remember The Chariot?
Yes.
Which are like, they were just so heavy and raw and like messy. There was a big trend back in the day after like death metal got massive back in like the 2000s or whatever. And it was all about discords and being disgusting. And there was a band called And Their Eyes Were Bloodshot. And I think like really early stages of like Bring Me and stuff, they were like supporting Bring Me. And they were just like, Sleeps had like a 2-dayer with these guys and they needed a singer. And I was just like, fuck yeah, I'm down to do it. So I just went over, didn't even really know the songs. And like, we've got a video from that first ever show and it's fucking hilarious. But yeah, we just all sat in the back of like a VW Caddy and drove from here to Belgium. Just got absolutely trolleyed for the entire time, and just I went over there and played shows, and that was like my first introduction to Sleeps really early on. Like you're talking 2007 probably, maybe 2006. So it was like really early on for us, and that was the fill-in. Then kind of what happened was like I joined bands around my local area. And that's kind of how I met Sleeps, but they're a few years younger than me. So at the time, their singer left and they tried out a couple of other singers, and I was working at a school at the time as like a learning support assistant. And I remember being like, ringing them up and being like, guys, why the fuck have you not just asked me to join? Because we always used to talk about like, what if I joined, how good it would be, and, you know, kind of the commitment side of things being a big deal. And then, so yeah, that's how it all started in the beginning. I was just like, dude, I'm so down to join. Like,
just waiting for the call.
Yeah, I was just like, why the fuck have you not called? And they just assumed that I was kind of over it.
Yeah.
And I was like, am I fucked? Like the day I left my job to join the band, I like ripped my shirt off and tied it around my head and like literally grabbed a tinny and just fucking downed it. And I was like, let's fucking do this shit. And that's what we've been doing ever since. So yeah, it was a good call. At the time, my mum worked at the school that I was working at as well. And I just remember like going into a like one like break time and I was like, I think I'm just going to quit this and join a band. And I expected it to be like, you know, that's an insane idea. You've got a solid job here that's going to pay well. You get the holidays and school dinners. Like, what more do you want? And yeah, I was just like, I'm just going to go and do this. And she was really supportive. She was like, just follow your dream. If you think it's going to work, then just go for it. And luckily, I'm sat here like 12 years later or something, you know. So it was a good move. But yeah, that was my first introduction to a sleep show and how I sort of got into the band.
Yeah, well, I think your mum obviously knew there was something there. You obviously knew there was something there. And here we are in 2021, perched on the 5th studio album for Lawrence Loz Taylor. So thank you for leaving your job and becoming a rock star.
No, thank you so much. So, are you a fan of the band then? You said you heard.
Actually, I'm trying not to fangirl, but like I only found out like less than 12 hours ago, and I was like,
don't be daft. No, it's been lovely talking to you, and so thanks for listening and you know, being a part of the whole thing. Like, it's wicked.
No, I'm really grateful, and I know pandemic is a little bit of a shit at the moment, but as soon as you guys can jump on the very long plane ride, we will happily have you in Australia anytime. So we'll be waiting for the new album.
Yeah, I missed out on the last Sleeps tour in Australia with Architects and Polaris because I'd been a naughty boy and like I got sort of like semi-kicked out of the band for a while, down to a bit of alcohol abuse. So I needed to come home and have a word with myself and like sort things out. So yeah, I was taking some time, but yeah, I'm gagging. I love it out there in Australia. It's so much fun, and like the people are so cool. So hopefully next time we'll have a bit of a beer or something and chill.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time. I hope your night's not too long, and thank you for the chat and all the best for the album release. Can't wait.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You have a
Thanks for your time.
You too.
Welcome to the Sleep Society!